And this is the point where we found out we've gone live on YouTube.
That's 5 minutes.
Sounds kicked in.
Yeah, yes, out of context, Melissa. That would be a good one, wouldn't it? Oh dear. Okay. Tim doesn't look hopeful there, to be brutally honest with you.
It's not the face.
Okay, guys, that worked, thankfully.
Oh, we in?
That was probably the most stressful couple of minutes of my professional life. Yeah, so you might see there's a little guy who's popped out. That's my colleague, John. He's going to take over because I'm not going to be in this call. So...
Everybody, welcome to the inaugural online Brewers Lectures. It's possibly the hottest day of the year. Virgin Media's been trying to go down, but we've got here. We've finally made it. And obviously we've had some big news this week in that hospitality can start reopening from the weekend. So this is possibly an extremely timely moment to be having these conversations with brewers and industry people from across the industry. So just before we start, I just need to do a couple of thank yous. We thank Lalman Brewing, who's got supported by decades-long standing industry experience, extensive sport network, strong technical expertise, and it's perfectly positioned to help breweries achieve their growth and quality goals. So premium brewing yeasts and bacteria offer unmatched consistency and reliability, as we've got Rob beautifully modelling the Wild Brew Sour pitch in the background there. So I'm sure we'll have a bit of a chat about that later. And obviously, if you want to go and find out more, you can visit lalamanbrewing.com. Also, thanks to Muntons. Muntons manufactures and supplies globally a wide range of malts that have been developed through experience to satisfy the exacting needs of today's creating brewers and distillers. And obviously great beers start with Muntons. So, guys, how are we doing? Hang a minute, brewers, hands up who's really happy not to be in the brewery right now. or kicking out a mash tun or doing yeah, exactly. Yeah, woo! That's going to be good for that. I'm just going to introduce everybody. We've got Brian Dixon, who's the head brewer at Northern Monk. We've got Fergus Fitzgerald, who's the head brewer at Adnams. We've got Sienna O'Rourke, who's sales and marketing at Pressure Drop. We've got Robert Percival, who's the regional sales manager Europe for Lallemand. And we've got Jager Wise, who's the head brewer at Wildcard. So welcome, everybody. Thank you very much for taking the time out, either of working or sunbathing, depending on which one you were doing. I imagine working for most of us right now. So, big week in terms of what's just happened. I guess really my first question would be to you folks. Did you feel like you had preparation? Did you feel like you had enough notice? I mean, particularly for those of you, and I think everybody here brews cask. Obviously, Rob, you provide products for cask brewing. Does anybody feel like they had enough warning, or did you just sort of run on the rumour mill and stick finger in the air and pray?
Finger in the air, I think, but that's pretty normal, isn't it? In brewing, there's usually a lot of fingers in the air. But yeah, I definitely didn't have as much notice as we would have liked. But I think we've gotten used to how the government sort of communicated over the last couple of months. So I think we all knew it was probably going to happen. So we, like every other brewery, I guess, we took a flyer a couple of weeks ago and assumed it would happen and started brewing and started racking for cask last week.
Is that the same for everybody? Have you all sort of started doing that now?
No, we don't do cask at Pressure Drop.
Of course you don't.
But we haven't got plans to start re-kegging, like going into keg beer just yet. We're able to do everything by a small pack at the moment. So we're just going to keep doing that until we have like a definite, you need it, beer out.
Did you feel like it was too much of a dangerous investment to take the leap of faith that you needed to start turning on draft, or were there some supply issues?
I mean, we've got loads of empty kegs. We've got all the stuff that's just been sat around for 3 months. So we can just go straight into kegging beer as well. But yeah, for us, it's just a bit of caution. And, the fact remains we make less GP on our keg beer. So we're not going to jump the gun and start packaging stuff that's going to sit there any time longer than it needs to, because the sales are there in can for us anyway.
Yeah, understandable. And Jager, what about you? Have you started making some cask beer or cracking off some cask beer?
I'm thinking about keg beer. So everything to do with this crisis has been, they have fed the information to the newspapers, haven't they, a few weeks in advance, and you kind of get a wind that it might happen, and then they release it in some cases with a week to go, sometimes even less. So you see, from the government, it's been very kind of chaotic, but understandably why. I think they probably could have done things a lot better and been a lot more organised, but hey, it's not a political conversation. We've basically, at the very beginning, switched pretty much everything into small pack. And that takes a bit of undoing, doesn't it? But you can't just suddenly, because you all of a sudden you're selling beer here, there and everywhere. It's going to take us a little bit of time. Is our tap room going to be open on the 4th of July? Yes, our tap rooms are going to be open. But we're still kind of figuring it out. It was just literally 2 days ago. So we've been figuring out how we're going to serve people, how we're going to keep staff safe, how we're going to keep customers safe. But we've got beer in tank. It doesn't take long to put beer into a keg. It's just the whole myriad of issues that are the problem.
Brian, I mean, what have you guys made? Did you take the leap of faith that it was all going to happen on the 4th of July, or?
Certainly in terms of taproom and so on, yeah, we've been planning for the 4th of July for a while. So the Leeds Refectory has been open last weekend, and next weekend just doing takeout, but just to help us get a feel for how we do distancing in a one-way system in a building like the Flux store. I mean, I think most people here have been up that staircase. It's not definitely not designed for distancing. And then from their point of view, I think we're in a similar position to Sienna and the Pressure guys that we've still got a lot of keg that's in date at the moment. It's been stored at 4 degrees, so going a little bit of that, making sure we're happy. But we have keg volume on the go. And in terms of casks, I guess to use Jagger's words, thinking about it. This beer and tank, I mean, we don't do anything specifically cask only. So if we feel like the demand is starting to come in, we may be in a position to say, okay, we're going to take off X amount of beer into casks for a couple of weeks' time. But at the moment, then we've got keg volume to work through. We've it's been a big effort to go 100% small pack over the last few months and setting up the team accordingly. So and it says I think there's a transition to be made there to restructure the teams before we really start doing some volume. And I don't think we really know what the volume is going to be because there's a lot of places aren't able to operate on those distancing measures. And a lot of places are going to do it on their own time. They're going to do it on their own terms. Probably give it a couple of weeks to see how things pan out. And obviously, there's always that risk of a second wave and so on, which you could be just getting into stride and shutting down again. So I think Cass may have to wait a little while whilst we see the lay of the land.
Yeah, it's very much that. Rob, have you seen any runs on particular yeast strains or anything like that suddenly as people are beginning to gear back up?
Good afternoon, everyone. Obviously, from the start of the lockdown, it's been quite tricky, I think is one way to put it, to look at demand for the market across Europe, which I've been spending a lot of time doing the last few months, is looking at forecasting and across the wider region, not just in the UK, of course, but I think the trouble is not so much production and having goods available. It's keeping goods on the market and having that supply, the supply chain, crucially having access to different products. Like we're talking about cask beer now, such as fining products. Obviously, with the yeast as well. That I think the great difficulty that we've seen is companies, so distributors, breweries, all winding stock and inventory down, understandably for a number of reasons. They might have short shelf lives on products. Obviously, you don't want to be racking up debt, and with people having limited cash flows, etc. So the trouble is now everything is kind of click your fingers, everything's back in action. Actually, just getting it out into the supply chain.
We furloughed as well is the other problem to think about.
Yeah. Well, that's I mean, just on a general point about communication. I mean, a lot of staff in breweries, a lot of staff in distributors, the procurement people making the orders, controlling and monitoring stock levels and stuff. They've not been in work, to be able to contact. So I think the communication issue is as much of an issue as actually having product available.
Obviously, we've just sort of touched on the whole issue of sort of the on-trade venues and things like that. I think we're addressing that a little bit more in the next one. But I feel that sort of the challenges of the actual physical process of actually having a brewery in this time. I mean, what would you say you've got as key takeaways of lessons that you've learned about how you've had to pivot, and was there any one particular moment where you had a light bulb of what you can do in terms of small pack, or what you can do in terms of whether it's direct sales to the public or something like that, or do you feel maybe this is a bit more of a landmark of perhaps people going back to local a bit more?
Definitely. I mean, we were quite lucky, I think, in how we were positioned at the start of the lockdown. We'd had set up our e-commerce about a year prior, and it had been ticking along and doing quite nicely with like super fans. but we had a pretty slick setup. All our processes were in place. You know, we used to just do dispatching once a week. And then as soon as the lockdown happened, we knew that we had to just go full force into that, because we didn't know how long it would last, whether couriers would still be able to deliver. So we were like, let's just push this as hard as we can. We're going to dispatch every day. We're going to promote the crap out of it. And, you know, we increased by 600%, you know, in that first month just on our online. And that's really saved us massively over this time. And I think we've gained a major audience that we wouldn't have had before, people who probably wouldn't have been likely to buy online, who now will buy direct from us because they've had a really good experience. So I think that was like a very ancillary part of our business before the lockdown, but going forward is definitely going to be quite a major part of how we do things and how we allocate stock, and just having that direct relationship for sure. Like, is one positive, I think.
Yeah.
If there's anything to come out of this, that's positive. That's something for us that's been really good.
Well, it's, you know, at the end of the day, you're in the business of selling beer, so anything that improves your sales is not a bad thing, is it? Has anybody sort of come across anything logistically, or you know, just one thing that you found, or one particular supplier maybe who really stepped up to the plate for you, and really, you know, made your life better, whether it was your can supplier or labelling or anything like that? Has anybody really found that there's been one thing that's really positive like that?
I think the level of understanding generally across the brewing industry, and for us personally, has been quite high. I don't know about everyone else, but the first thing we did was just pause literally everything and talk to all of our suppliers, and we had the same with our customers to us. There's been a huge amount of understanding, and there hasn't really been anyone who I can say has been particularly negative, to be honest with you. I know from our perspective, I don't know about you.
Yeah, similar. I mean, again, first thing I did was a lot of conversations with raw material suppliers, not knowing what our production was going to be for the period, and and there's a lot of doubt for those guys as well. They're already expecting a lot of contracts not to be fulfilled and so on, but the willingness to be patient and wait, and even already discussing extension of contracts, things like that, and call-off times, and then I guess the areas, and then you got the areas, I guess, especially with everyone's small pack, the can suppliers and the labellers have been absolutely swamped. So I mean, we can but praise those guys for the level of communication, just understanding. Understanding our needs. I felt like we got an element of appreciation of being a long-term customer and so on. But I think everyone's been in the boat, whether it's been an unknown of how much sale they're going to get at all, or whether a massive swarm in demand. And I think it's nice to across the board, suppliers and brewers have all been. Everyone's in the same boat. We'll make it work.
Well,
in both directions and.
Yeah, well, I think you've both touched upon the crucial thing, which I alluded to before, which was communication. And I think there is a lot of understanding. I think the whole supply chain is in a relatively similar position, but there is a lot of understanding. So it's great if you can, from a supplier point of view, if we can get that feedback, which obviously we've spent a lot of time focusing on that. I think the key thing is transparency. If you are struggling with stock levels, maybe even with credit and paying off stuff like that because of reduced cash flow, just speak to your supplier. And I'm glad to hear that Jaeger and others have had positive experiences by just being transparent. I think that's all that suppliers ask for.
Yeah. No, I think everyone realised pretty early we were all in the same boat. And I think I've never heard the word cash so much in my life as in the last 12 weeks. But I think every supplier we talked to was amazing, really, in terms of the support they gave and the understanding sort of they had. And it's obviously not over yet. So I think we're sort of almost in the riskiest period now as we go into opening up, because actually, we now have to start making more stuff. We start having to buy more ingredients, and then we have to sell those to pubs who at the moment have got no idea how many people are going to walk through that door. So we've got, they can't tell us when they're really going to pay for that straight away. So that there's going to be more demands on people's cash flow for the next 2 months probably, and this is the really tricky time. And then Brian mentioned about sort of hop contracts. So again, it's not just about what we've already bought. It's about what we've already said we're going to buy for the next 12 months, and all that just pivots the whole hop industry. Particularly, obviously, depends on clearing out all those hop stores before next year's harvest comes in. So there's so many logistical challenges that are going to sort of come up over the next 2 months.
Yeah, it's complicated. And just sort of going back to the cask question, I guess, because I think that's something that's playing on a lot of people's minds. Is a lot of venues that sell cask are really going to struggle potentially with the reopening, even with 1 meter plus. That really helpful direction. 2 meters where you can do, 1 meter where you 1 meter where you can't. I mean, I sincerely doubt anybody's going to be putting in 2 meters where they can put in 1 meter, and so on and so forth. And a lot of these venues are going to be small and cask is. Do you feel like there's anything that potentially as brewers you can be doing to? Is it more mini casks? Is it more more bag in box stuff? Maybe offering it so that people keep cask at the top of their minds.
Well, for us, we're trying to keep the range really low. So for our own pubs, they're not going to go back with a pub that would normally have 5 or 6 different cask beers on. They'll probably open with 2. And see where things go. But yeah, I guess it's the normal sort of rule around cask beer. You aim to sell it through in 3 days. Some beers will last a bit longer. That's fine. But you sort of start off with a point of view that you're trying to empty that in 3 days. But at the moment, pubs have got no idea who's going to come through the door, so it's really difficult. So I think start small and build up as you get confidence, as customers get confidence in going back, then build up. But I think the last thing anyone wants to do is take more expense now throwing beer away. So I think start small and build up.
Yeah, it's interesting. So obviously some of you people will have work responsibilities with tap rooms and things. We're opening on the 4th, but anybody going straight down the pub on the 4th?
Probably not.
I find it really interesting that virtually everybody I've spoken to who's in the industry is just like that.
No, we're not opening either. We're just completely going to play it by ear. There's so many venues that really need it.
Is that you, Fergus?
No, absolutely not. That was not our Thursday fire alarm test.
Yeah, there's so many venues that really need the cash flow because it's their only source of income.
Yeah.
So and we'd much rather let them experience that initial rush. We'll learn from their mistakes, and we'll be able to do it better ourselves. And we're not in a rush to throw the doors open, basically. As much as we'd love to have people down and drinking in the tap room because it is so lovely, it is a 1 day a week sort of side thing.
It was I think I'm only going to my local pub because it has the most enormous back garden and like a book table, so that's it was good. That was my entire. It was like, and it's also 2 days after the hubby's birthday, so I feel like it'd be a bit cruel to say, "Are you insane?" That seems a little bit. So I mean, to sort of we coming slightly halfway through our time, or a bit more than halfway through our time. It's not a happy thought. It's not a happy thought. Apparently,
it might actually be a fire. Hold on, I'll be back in a minute.
Okay.
It's not. All right.
Please,
just going to go on mute while I sort it.
Yeah, we'll let you know as any smoke appears over your shoulder.
I've just got visions of Fergus turning into a meme now, sitting there surrounded by flames, saying it's fine, everything's fine. in a rather sad way. I mean, has anybody got a plan in place if we do get a second wave? Is there planning in place for that, or is it really sort of a continuation of what's been happening? Has there been a specific thought process put into that?
I mean, we're putting an app together. Even with the taproom being open, I think we're going to really push on that delivery and takeaway model pretty hard going forward. I think. I mean, we have got a nice size space, and we can utilize the event space at the top floor. We can spread things out, but I mean that just requires extra staffing across an increased space to everywhere to run that at whatever capacity actually ends up being. So I think having that model of say if another lockdown comes in, and if you've already established a decent system for delivery and takeaway, then which I think a lot of pubs and tap rooms have kept that going right through. So I are in a reasonably strong position there that they revert back to type. But and yeah, because again, I guess we are similar to Bishop as well. We're lucky that we're not entirely reliant on that tap room to succeed to be okay. Which I guess adds more doubt. Well, just add more doubt to those who have been shut that if they put it all in place for 1 week and then have to go out again. Then yeah, it's you can understand their concerns. So, but yeah,
very much so.
I think we're in a much better position this time. At least we know potentially what's coming. I think it just took us all by such a massive surprise. So at Wildcard, we'd never sold a bean online before. So we didn't have an online shop. So for us, it was literally like within 24 hours doing an online offering. And we didn't even have our own delivery van. So it was literally me, Will, in the little crappy KA delivering beer to people's houses in Walthamstow. You know what I mean? But now we have, which you can imagine what that looks like. But now we have a system. Now we have some delivery drivers. Now we have. So I feel like we're better prepared. Hopefully, second wave it doesn't happen, but we're better prepared.
Yeah. It's a tough thing to think of, but I think that, as you say, if people have actually learnt their lessons from this one, then hopefully there'll be a move around. Rob, while we've got you, have you got any exciting new products that are coming out at the moment?
Yes.
While they've got a little bit of downtime on their hands.
Well, I mean, obviously, our technical sales team globally is kept, in work the full time, and that's given us more opportunity to focus a lot on R&D and exciting things. So just as lockdown was happening, we launched our first Kvike strain, which, as you can imagine, at the moment, it's kind of going crazy with interest, particularly in these sweltering heats and the kind of extreme fermentation temperatures and stuff. Obviously, we've seen a huge increase in homebrew globally, and the Kvike is like the perfect thing for homebrewers right now. We've just launched an acid producing yeast as well in the past 2 weeks. So we've focused the last few years on bacteria products.
Is that one that JK used for Heaven Up?
No, it's not.
No.
No, he used a different one, which was, yes, it was our product, but not the Philly sour. So this new acid-producing yeast, so you do the fermentation and the souring at the same time, as opposed to introducing bacteria in the yeast separately. And as the name would suggest, Philly sour, it was isolated in Philadelphia, and it was actually isolated by the University of Sciences from a tree in a graveyard in Philadelphia. So it's a really exciting
not
new.
your strongest selling point, I'll be honest with you.
No, well, there were, because actually it's a unique species, and we're obviously thinking of different names, and kind of the graveyard did come up in a few naming options, and were thankfully ruled out very quickly. But we are as well, just in the next few weeks, actually going to be launching a brand new IPA yeast. We've been working, we isolated a culture from Verdant Brewing Co. We've been working on this probably, I don't know, for about 2 years or so in total since we first isolated this strain from a culture that they had. And I've just had delivery of the first packs, literally about 10 minutes before we came live on. So I think just before I have to disappear, I might just quickly go and grab one and do some tantalizing. But certainly we're going to be focused a lot of our technical kind of talks and stuff focusing around IPA, which is really exciting because it's given me the kind of past few weeks of really delving into like the history and the conventions of IPA, and it's just been fascinating to work on such a rewarding and rich topic. Yeah.
So you've been reading a lot of Ron Pattinson.
Yeah, and this is one as well.
I mean, I guess there's a bit of I don't know what you guys have been seeing in sales wise, but if all the bottle shops and so on and so forth that I've been speaking to have really been talking about the fact that they've had a huge increase in people wanting sessionables, like, you know, big beer drops have not been quite as anywhere near as important to people. They want 5% and below. No low sales have gone up for virtually everybody that I've spoken to as well. So I mean, do you think this might be a bit of a wave? Are you seeing sort of the market split a bit as well?
I think that it's potentially more to do with the fact that people who would normally get their sort of everyday drinking beer in the pub, they're now going to the bottle shops where they wouldn't have been going before.
Yeah.
So for us anyway, the demand for our IPAs is by far the highest. And, you know, there's obviously still demand for Pale Fire and the weaker beers in our range, but no more than normal. But I can totally understand why bottle shops would be seeing a major swell in that, because there's nowhere else you can get them anymore.
Yeah, we actually saw for the first few weeks, we saw the opposite. So we saw a massive push on stronger IPAs for a while. I guess
everyone was stocking up.
Yeah, I think just stocking up and just looking for that interesting fix to get through. But yeah, I think as things have settled down, definitely an increase in core sales, familiarity, more 4-pack, 6-pack purchases, and so on. Which reiterates, I think, just familiarity in the fridge. Which I think will stick going forward. I think that's one thing we will see. I think it's good. People are getting away from that new beer trends to be, you know, actually say, all right, I'm going to have 2 or 3 beers that are always in my fridge. And I think craft beer drinkers haven't really had that yet. And I think, there's, I guess, a maturity of the industry. It's nice to see. And we're kind of carrying on, looking around.
Well, Melissa, our table beer, our 2.7% table beer, we've had to brew it twice this lockdown.
Nice.
So yeah.
That's good. Yeah.
I know we've seen a pretty good increase in the sort of low and no particularly over the last sort of 8 weeks. I think at the start there was an increase in just sort of normal strength beer, but I think in the last few months, I think the sort of low and no has sort of gained ground again. I think it was just that, you know, people who wanted to cut down, I think, before are still cutting down. So I think there's still a big growth in that sort of low and no category at the moment. Yeah,
definitely. I polished off my last can of Ghost Ships after a very hot ride on Monday. Yeah, so that went down a treat. Just one last thing. Obviously, in the middle of all of this, there's a middle bit that we haven't really talked about, and that's obviously distros. Having, you know, distributors have obviously been cut out of the loop a little bit. Is everybody still, you know, again, that communication thing? Are all your communication channels still okay with your distributors, and nobody's got to be having some problems?
I mean, the vast majority have been fantastic. One of our sort of bigger customers went radio silence for basically the whole of the lockdown and sort of wouldn't engage, wouldn't tell us where they're at or stock or anything, which I think is damaging in the long term you know, for how it's all going to work.
Mm.
You know, the ones who we've had great communication with, we obviously want to keep getting the beer to them and keep working with them going forward. And, you know, it's important to have that link out to the regional areas, especially in London. You know, we've got a really big local market, but you can sort of feel like you're in a bit of a bubble.
Mm.
Go, oh, no one's ever heard of us up in Norwich. So it's definitely important. Everyone had to make their own decisions for their own businesses, of course. But it did kind of feel a bit like the distributors maybe were a bit quick in our experience. A lot of them just sort of shut up shop and were like, okay, we're just going to pause everything because the pubs are shut. And we've had so many people come to us wanting to buy direct because they just can't get beer anywhere else.
Yeah.
So, you know, hindsight 2020.
Yeah.
But it's interesting. I think it's going to be a really tough road to build those relationships back up and get those businesses running again. I really hope that they can.
Yeah.
I think the key thing is the market has changed.
Yeah.
And we don't know where it's going to settle. Because all of a sudden we've got breweries up and down the country all selling direct to the public. Things have changed.
Yeah. Yeah, it is a different universe that we're sort of stepping into. But as you say, I'm sure that those distributors that have maintained their relationships and made sure that they've stayed in contact will be the ones that will really benefit.
And you know, we'll still work with everyone. We want the beer to get out there. That's the main thing at the end of the day. But it's tricky when things don't go so well in the meantime.
Yeah, I think it's gonna have an effect on price structures somewhat as well. I think, you know, distributors are gonna have to look very much at, because people now have been buying direct from breweries. Price awareness is going to have increased of individual products and so on and so forth. And it's a difficult. The problem is that, of course, is that everybody knows the price of beer, but not the value of it.
From speaking of brewers as well, it feels like there's going to be very few credit terms being offered at the other side of it as well. I guess the distributor's point of view will make a massive difference, but again, who knows where it'll actually settle out.
Yeah, sorry about that, because the last few minutes of this, somebody's decided to start screaming or something outside, making some sort of racket. So there we go. I'm so pleased I've had to close the windows. Well, listen, folks, that's our time. We are going to finish up here because, well, you know, everybody needs a comfort break in between the two talks. I just want to thank you all very, very. Oh, sorry. Before we go, Rob, you said you wanted to. I think the phrase was tantalise us.
That was. I ran very quickly down to my nice cool cellar to world exclusive. This is literally hot off the press. Our a new Verdant IPA yeast, which has been 2 years in development. It's nice new packs. So this is probably the most exciting delivery I've had of the lockdown. So I'm very happy. But we really look forward to being able to share information about this exciting new strain in due course. But it's something I've been personally involved with. So great. Well, we've had a bit more time on our hands to dedicate it to something positive, I guess.
Yeah. Whereas I realised this morning that I'd hit peak London food and drink wanker when I received artisan vinegar, London-made halloumi, and a bunch of craft beers in the same delivery. So, you know, I think you're probably less of a so and so than I am, Rob. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for your time. It's lovely for me to see your faces, by the way. I've missed everybody in the industry horribly. You know, I don't expect you to say the same way round. Like social media waffling about things. But seriously, thank you ever so much. Go outside if you can. Enjoy the sunshine, at the very least. Enjoy a beer. I hope to see you all in person soon. Take care.
I'll just go and deal with that fire.
That fire out, please. See you soon.
Thanks, everyone. Take care. Bye now.
Yeah.
2. Okay, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you very much for joining us on the second part of the Brewers Lectures this afternoon. Sorry for having you inside on the hottest day of the year, or maybe you want to be inside on the hottest day of the year, I'm not quite sure. And for those of you on Virgin Media, I hope that you've actually got a connection back. So that's been an interesting morning as we've been discussing whether we're going to make people pass out in their offices and whether they're even going to be able to see us. So we've just a very quick thank you again to Lallemond and Muntons for sponsoring this. And obviously want to bring your attention to the fact that there will be a 2020 Brewers Congress and Brewers Choice Awards this year. The awards will be taking place in London on the 8th, and with the Brewers Congress very optimistically following the day after on the 9th. Lads, have you never seen us lot at awards ceremonies? We're not well behaved. There'll be a lot of snoring in the audience the next day. Anyway, so if you want to head on over to awards.brewersjournal.info, then you should be able to make sure that you pick up some tickets, and there's some early bird. Right, so on to the stop the flogging and on with the interrogation instead. Welcome back, everybody, and welcome to our next panel of guests. So we've got Christian Barden, who's the UK Managing Director of Kegstar. We've got James Calder, who's the CEO of SIBA. We've got Miranda Hudson, who's the co-founder and sales and marketing at Duration Brewing. We've got Stu McKinley, who's the co-founder of the Yeasty Boys, and we have Charlie McVeigh, founder of the Draft House chain of pubs and also Project Pint. So thank you very much for joining us, everybody. It's good to see your faces. I've got to be honest, as I was hanging up with the last, it was like, I don't want to hang up with all these people that I haven't seen forever. This sucks. But I have a lovely new set of faces to see and have a chat with, so that's really good. So just to let the people watching know, if you want to ask any questions, then Tim is texting me with any pertinent questions as we go through. So if you apologies for any dings and bongs and things that you hear, but that will be your questions coming through. So at least hopefully you know you're reaching us. Big week of all the leaks and the intimations and the possible maybe sort ofs coming through to actually be confirmed. James, I'm going to start with you because obviously you've spent an awful lot of time hammering on the doors of government as SIBA and trying to make sure that you try and get through and represent your membership, and in reality, the needs and requirements of people who probably aren't your members as well. And so I wondered, there seemed to be some very obvious frustration on social media coming through. I felt that you didn't feel like you were being listened to in the corridors of power, or even getting to talk to anybody. How did it all shake out?
I'm not sure that perception is quite right, really. I mean, I think the frustration stemmed from the fact that Number 10 were holding up the process. We've had the guidance ready that was published yesterday for at least 2 weeks, if not a little bit more. The guidance has been ready to go. Ministers have been listening. What was holding that process up was Boris basically looking at the polling numbers and making the determination as to whether or not he could get away with 1 metre plus on July the 4th. That was the frustration, I think. We had a call we had a hospitality call with the minister responsible on, it was Wednesday or Thursday last week, and it was unanimous, completely unanimous. The frustration was around the time frame, not that we were being listened to. Right. I think more than anything, actually, what this crisis has taught me is that as a sector, we are listened to by government, and disproportionately so. There was a piece in the papers this morning, gym owners and theatre owners pointing the finger at us as vested interests. Well, that's actually quite a nice place to be.
If only.
Yeah, I mean, I think
we're the whipping boy.
Yeah, that's a first. It's like, oh, good, excellent. So alcohol tax will be going down shortly, then, will it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's I mean, yes, there's an element of agreement certainly over the sort of 21 years I've been writing about this industry, and Charlie, you've obviously felt that quite keenly. I mean, I do you feel that there's areas? I mean, obviously we all feel that there's areas that could have been dealt with better, but certainly as somebody who used to own pubs, how frustrating do you find it that there was absolutely no recourse for licensees who were still being charged rent whilst they literally physically couldn't open their doors.
Well, I mean, I got into a Twitter spat on Friday during my attempts to promote Project Pint, and it's clear that there are a lot of people out there who are part of the that group that we know up until very recently was a majority of people who still felt that unlocking was happening too fast, that they were afraid of going out and so on. And anyone who was, as I was, trying to convert what we called FOGO, the fear of going out, to FOMO, the fear of missing out, was actually, someone actually accused me of gaslighting people who are sitting at home and so on. And I, person will remain nameless, they may be watching, but it brought home to me really what a huge divide there is, and also why I think Boris has been sitting on his hands with regards to making this decision, because really there are, we have more effectively communicated Project Fear in this country than anywhere else, and all the surveys show that we are the most afraid country, and that's why really I wanted to set up Project Pint, which was meant to be a positive initiative to get people back into pubs and also restaurants, clubs, and so on, and to bring them back as they were as soon as possible when it's safe. And I absolutely share James's frustration looking at, the guidance was there, they had the plan, they'd already told us in May that we were going to open on July 4th, and they just would not confirm it, to the extent that, we had a group of, I think, in the end, I think it was 160 operators who were going to open regardless, of whether they were allowed to open or not, led by that great insurgent Peter Borg-Neal from Oakman Inns, who rallied people on Twitter and on the WhatsApp groups, because literally we felt that every day that passed after that, and this obviously feeds back through everyone on this call, but every day after that, meant more of the 3.2 million jobs in the sector itself, and obviously the other 2 million jobs of which the people on this call represent, who supply our industry. So it was very frustrating, but I actually think that, and actually my anticipation was going to be worse. I thought he wasn't going to make an announcement until like the 2nd or the 3rd or something. I really felt that was coming. So I was actually pleasantly surprised when we got it, when we got it, even though it was a pain in the ass. But
that shows you how low our expectations.
Yeah, well, no, literally, that's when I say we're the whipping boy. I mean, honestly, I think we just get, despite the fact we make all, we do fantastic placemaking in town centres. We employ, 3 or 4 million people. We do all these fantastic things. We deliver 13 billion in tax revenue to the government, and yet we remain the whipping boy, and I find that disappointing. But I think maybe I think Kate from UK Hospitality and James from Seaburn and others have done a fantastic job in terms of promoting us at this time. And I think it's been a real opportunity for the industry to up its profile with government. And I think maybe we actually have. I agree. I mean, it's possible.
So that's a nice bit of clarity as well, because whilst there's been intimations that this has all been a popularity game, actually, really knowing for absolute certain that it has been there for 2 weeks and it's just been held is
yeah. Just one more point,
but also makes perfect sense.
One more point, Melissa, is that the guidance is actually really positive because it's very vague, and it allows operators to interpret it as they will. So some operators are panicking because they need specific guidelines and they can't operate in grey. But actually, grey is what you want, because it allows you to say, okay, how am I going to make my premises safe? And every premises is different. Every premises has different requirements to make it safe. So what we've actually got out of government, I think, is pretty much perfect. Other than, and this affects everyone on this call, vertical drinking, which they clearly have decided is a complete no-no. And I think it's the one thing where if the EHO walks into your pub and there's a bunch of people standing around with pints, I think you're in the shit.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's an important point. James, have you got anything you want to add there?
Yeah, I mean, vertical drinking inside a pub is not good, but vertical drinking outside a pub is absolutely fine, unless it's Westminster City Council, which wants to ban vertical drinking outside. But given the people who inhabit Westminster do a lot of drinking outside those pubs, I think those MPs might have a word about that. But there we go. Different point.
Westminster's a special breed. They
I
always.
think they've rolled back on that, haven't they? I believe. I think that was a bit of foolishness that they quickly unwound. Yeah.
It's one. I think it was within the first 2 weeks of writing for the then licensee in Morning Advertiser that I first heard the phrase uttered effing Westminster Council is actually dead, and it hasn't really stopped since. So I mean, right? So okay. So in your opinion, the greyness of the guidelines, I think that's been quite concerning. But obviously, more importantly as well, is that we need to start getting the beer moving. So Christian, obviously, moving receptacles around the place is a very first important step. So how are you guys going on?
Pretty good. I'll kind of go all the way back to the first thing, and I think the points that have been made are spot on, that this is such a huge economic driver to the UK. So to end up sort of with some of the lack of forthrightness in terms of decision making has been painful, but then at the same time useful to have some of the guidelines that we've got for people to get up and running across the board and doing it the right way and safely. So we kind of actually just before we all took off to BRX, we kind of got the team together and said, look, I don't know quite what's going to happen, but it feels like it's coming like a train and we need to get ourselves absolutely bang on right for it. And so having only just started this 4 years ago, and all sort of a handful of us that were around who started this, were able to pull straight back on what it was like going through those early days and the sheer pain of building a business from scratch that's a pretty competitive marketplace. So we yanked on that quite hard and landed on a theory that was kind of, well, we're all going to be in different locations. It's very easy to kind of have a load of emotions running high and low, which was one of our chats that we were having before we went live. And the principle is look, before you write anybody off, a partner, a customer, one of your colleagues, just pick up the phone and reach out. And so we got straight into all of that, focusing on people, and of course, what does the customer need? And when we come out of this, and none of us knew it was going to be 3 months, we were all kind of hoping it might be a few weeks, and it could have been an awful lot more, and there might be a second peak as well. But so long as we get these things right now, keep the operation at an appropriate level of hibernation, protect the people, protect the partners, protect our customers as best we can so that we can come out of this and open up again, then it's about waking up the system. And right now, we're waking up our collections partners who are doing a super job and doing it safely. For those people who take clean kegs, then we're waking up the machines in order to make sure that we're doing that the right way, and just doing it slowly to make sure that we build the cost base in line with whatever demand there is, including being really clear with all of our customers. And sorry if you find this frustrating, we've got plenty of kegs. We just don't want people to order too many and find that they've got a problem because 70% of pubs opening with 70% capacity, with 70% of the beer flying around, suddenly becomes an awful lot smaller than where we were. So we're just trying to be really, what's the right phrase? Cautiously optimistic, which kind of leads me to my last point, which is the kind of prayer we forced upon ourselves is the serenity prayer. And if people don't know it, then do look it up. But ultimately, what can I control? What can't I control? And the graciousness and the intelligence to know the difference. And that's what we've done, is just keep focusing on the people and keep focusing on what we can control. And so far, touch wood, the first few days of things ramping up, we're getting it okay, but bear with us, because guess what? We're running on tight lines as well. And we just want to make sure that we do what's right for everybody that we work with. Absolutely.
We've had quite an early and very pertinent question, which I wouldn't expect anything less from Francesca Slattery. In our last conversation, there was an allusion to credit terms and distribution and the whole sort of collective painful circle that the industry seems to run upon. And Francesca said, is it time to say enough is enough, or do we think it's just too tough to do that at that point? I mean, I guess that's a good question for you, Christian, also for Stu and Miranda, and balancing credit, robbing Peter to pay Paul all the time, and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, sort of where I got to on this one was, look, we're all commercial entities. I want to protect the people and all that sort of stuff as long as possible, for as best as possible. But keeping money trickling through is the crucial thing. Doing what's right by everybody tends to end up meaning that it can be paid back in a similar way. So if you get that kind of billing, that credit terms, that charging process right, then people know what they're dealing with. And much the same as all of our relationships, we enjoy consistency in our relationships, but whether it be inside or outside of work. And so being a consistent approach with customers and partners and keeping that money trickling through the system is a crucial part of it, not leaping from everything's on hold to extending credit terms till the nth degree, and then finding out that, I'm very grateful for the amount of support that we've picked up over the last 4 years of building this, but there are people who are going to expect us to still be here as we come out of this. And if I get that wrong, we won't be here. And by default, I've then messed up everybody's supply chain by not being appropriate with how we sort of keep that money trickling through.
You've got it, right? Generosity, credit, however you discuss it, it can only be given where you've got it. We've got pubs that are desperate and they're trying to place massive orders, and then they're like, oh wait, is it not 30 days? Sorry, can't do it, can't be expected to take that risk. And it's like, neither can we, so let's just all talk more. And if we've got existing relationships and we know we're transparent, then we can all have that conversation a lot easier. So we've definitely been speaking a lot more above and below on the supply chain.
And there's a case by case basis as well. When a customer hasn't paid a bill from December and they're doing £10,000 worth of work on their pub, you probably have to ask yourself some questions. But when someone took delivery of a keg a few weeks before the lockdown and they may have just put it on the day before or something like that, then of course we're going to be a lot better with those kind of things. I mean, we're very open to it. We are lucky enough that we can get through this reasonably well. We've got some cash reserves and we've probably been able to be a little more generous than most, but we're certainly not letting anyone off or giving away free kegs like I know a lot of businesses are at the moment.
I think it's a very dangerous environment to trade in. I mean, I think most operators, not most, a significant number of operators will have insolvency practitioners appointed to advise them on their options vis-a-vis restructuring, vis-a-vis insolvency, and so on. So, and they will be looking actively at those options. So, the objective always would be to try to stay solvent through it. But the disaster for pub and restaurant operators has been so profound, and particularly with the rent situation, if that isn't resolved, then I think you can expect a lot of people to go bust. And it may be a managed insolvency where they come back, buy up the assets and reappear, but whether they pay brewers or not in that scenario, who knows? And it's not necessarily because they're bad people. It may just be because this crisis has dealt them a blow that they can't recover from. And they still want to have a business going forward, but they just can't pay all their debts. And that will mostly, if it happens, it will mostly be driven by landlords. And again, landlords have got their own debts to pay, but it's very, very difficult. And I thought I would be looking at COD where you can. Yeah,
I was just about to say. So obviously, it seems like the sort of the general feeling here is this extension of credit is whilst obviously a personal decision on most businesses' parts, trying to minimise your exposure would be the very sensible move.
And to Miranda's point as well, that the for a bit of humour, and I'm conscious that this is a public place, but we were quite clear about the COVIDiots. You can pile in and give somebody exactly what they want because they're screaming and shouting, but that isn't actually how we're trying to make our businesses work. And it's got to be fair, and it's got to be equitable, and it's got to be balanced for everybody. And so you can look everybody square in the face and say, this is how we're going out of our business, about our business.
And if you didn't have a policy before, and I think a lot of the industry is based on friendships and trust and all right, mate, then now's the time to just think, well, let's get one. I mean, we were new, so we looked long and hard. I remember speaking with Jan at Marble, and everyone was talking about hype or FOMO or social media. She was like, the most important thing when setting up your brewery is credit control and get a good system in place. So we really thought long and hard based on that, 3 hours I spent with Jan, that I'm really thankful for. And we had a policy prior, and now we still have that same policy. So, you will get credit checked. We will run trade references. You have a credit limit. If you're not paying on that, we can't extend. Then that stops me over giving where you can't cough up.
And the lovely thing about having that set of rules is you can then be really clear about why you're breaking them and for who. Rather than having a mismatch of everything flying through your business.
Rules are really good for that. It's just like, I wish I could, but I can't, rather than, and then they find out that you've done something different for someone else, and it just ends up being, difficult. I think consistency is really good in that. But I think one of the other points that's come out of COVID is I think it has provided an opportunity for lots of businesses, the businesses who are good businesses and who will survive, to look at their company and go, what would the ideal state of my company actually be? And because for a lot of, I mean, you're new, Miranda, but for a lot of businesses have been around a while, you're always investing in growth, you're always investing in lots of things to try and make your business better. But when you get hit by something like this, you really look at it and go, if I was to say who is my perfect team, what are the things I really need to focus on? And when I come out of this, how am I going to build the most incredible business? It's going to just be a knockout and grow and make lots of people happy and make me lots of money. That's the thing that this provides, if you can survive, because it's so existential that everyone is listening, and everyone, staff, suppliers, etc. You can build it exactly how you want it. So I think that's an opportunity that shouldn't be missed in all of this.
Mm-hmm.
One point that brewers should be looking into, and this was announced about 2, 3, 4 weeks ago, something like that, but the government has underwritten, I think it was £17 billion worth of business-to-business transactions through trade credit insurance. So I know insurers aren't our favourite sector at the moment in pubs and brewing, but that trade credit insurance is really, really important, and I think brewers should be looking into that because we are facing huge credit risks as places open. Those historical big business failures that took a lot of debt with them and left a lot of brewers out of pocket. That's small fry in comparison to what we may see over the next 2 to 3 months when pubs are in the most fragile period of their lives.
So, James, could you just repeat what that was?
So it's trade credit insurance. So government has underwritten, I think it was £10 billion, but £17 billion worth of value of trade credit insurance to protect business to business transactions. Worth looking into.
Because us retailers don't understand all this, because of course everyone just pays when they come in. So we don't get credit control. It's not an issue for us.
Well, yeah, I think everybody should have an element of that in their business. There's been a question from somebody watching. Is anybody concerned about beer turning up that's out of date and things like that? I mean, I know that effectively pubs were you could take a video of you pouring it and you were able to claim it back and all that sort of stuff. Brewers were able to then claim it back and so on and so forth. But is there any concern about that? I mean, has it been even that long enough to be that worried about it? I mean, I guess Miranda and Stu, you both have products that could potentially.
We looked at our stock holding, and the hoppier beers that were packed a little bit before lockdown, we've already dumped all of those, and we've been speaking with our wholesalers that hold those stocks to discuss a return or a credit. We've spoken to most of the pubs where we deal direct and asked them to destroy. And, I think there will also be a glut of kegs that are exist now that are just going to flush through the system. So as a producer, we're not actually going back straight away. So while the on-trade is coming back, we have a small amount of stock holding in keg that we can service that ones with, and then we'll wait and let everything flush through, because you've got a disparity as well, haven't you? You've got everyone making super fresh cans that you're almost getting with package struck because they've come out the brewery so quick. And then you're going to have, I think a slightly older keg supply. So it is a worry.
Yeah, there's genuinely been a few beers that breweries have very, very kindly sent me throughout all of this, and said, and I've got the message, and it's like, it was just packaged, like it came off the line. You've got it. It's like, that's like for a week, and let the packaging shock calm down. Lovely as it is, it's not. It's actually once it literally off the line, it can be fantastic. But after that initial sort of day or so, it just needs a bit of time. But anyway,
great for customers' palates. Like everyone's been experiencing very, very fresh beer, which I think is brilliant.
We're the same, Melissa. We've, I think, I pretty much echo what Miranda said. I was in the tap room last Saturday just tasting through some old kegs of ours to see what's able to be still sold and what's not. We've ditched one batch of stuff. Our cans are all, like everyone else's, super fresh. We've got nothing more than, the latest batch that's been canned. In fact, we've run out several times during this last period, which has been pretty good in some regards, but not in others. And so we're making sure that everything's tasted beforehand. So, if we would happily drink pints of it ourselves, then we're going to sell it. And if not, we'll dump it. And certainly, I totally agree. So anything we packaged just before lockdown is probably tasting a lot better now than it would have been just before lockdown if it had gone straight out. We find the same thing with keg beer. Everything needs a little bit of time to develop its middle-aged spread to make it as sexy as we all are.
I've been trying very hard to work on that whilst I've been in lockdown, but also food and beer. Speaking earlier, and actually it's something that the minute the news broke, about 3-4 hours after that, my phone started going berserk with people asking me where could they get cask beer from, because it would appear that a lot of people just didn't want to, and rightly, even big companies, a couple of which have kind of shocked me a little, aren't actually really up and running with more than maybe 1 or 2 products on the cask front. So obviously, James, you've got a lot of cask focused members. So how any feedback from when people are starting, or have some already ramped up?
Yeah, people are starting. I think on the cask front, we actually missed a bit of a trick throughout lockdown, because those pubs that were open and were doing takeaway sales in your 4-pint jugs, people won't go to a pub for a 4-pint jug of Foster's, but they would go for a 4-pint of cask. And that wasn't necessarily about shifting the stuff that was left in the cellar. I think there may have been an opportunity missed a little bit for brewers to brew fresh cask and get that in while we were in lockdown. But hindsight is a wonderful thing. I have spoken to the big pub companies, the big 6, the big 7 or so, both formally and informally over the past fortnight or so. And that original pessimism around the perishability of cask, and we're not quite sure what we're going to put in, hasn't actually been founded. The big pub companies and the landlords, the individual freeholder licensees that do it well, do want it because they know consumers want it, because they haven't had it for the past 13 weeks. So my advice to brewers would be, speak to your customers if they want it, get brewing and get it in. I'm certainly going to buy a heck of it.
Oh my God, it's definitely first on my list. I almost don't mind what it is, just a pint of cask ale. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Brown cask booze has been the constant refrain of what are you going to drink first? Brown cask booze.
Yeah.
The one point I would make, some of the big distributors, they have they've consolidated their lines, they've consolidated their SKUs. I know K&DL are only putting in, I think, 26 or 27 cask brands nationally. So there is a huge opportunity for local delivery. That flexibility that independent brewers have to get cask beer out is something that we should really utilise over the next month, 2 months, definitely.
Just a caution that I think is always that I hear from people is that now is not the time to start devaluing your product by offering.
No, totally. Yeah, but there will be. There inevitably will. Cask prices are not good anyway, but in such a competitive marketplace, as Christian said, 70% of pubs, 70% of volume, maybe, there is going to be competitive pressure. But those that do it well, brew it well, keep it well, will prosper. And those that don't.
And on that sort of James's point around a missed opportunity, sort of on the contrary, here's where we're flushing out really only 3 months of time where actually that kind of that missed opportunity becomes the next opportunity. And Melissa, you touched upon devaluing brand. Well, actually, how do we kind of have those crunch sessions where we go, what are those things that we feel like we missed because we didn't have enough money, we didn't have enough time, we didn't have enough people actually back at work to do anything about it? Get those on a blank piece of paper as fast as possible as you start to build back up, because those are the ways in which we start to build value back into brands, value back into offering. And there's certainly things that we'll be doing to add to what we do now to make sure we're more resilient, but also offering more resilience if this happens again to our customers as well. So missed opportunity is only down the road of what we do next.
The pressing comments, I say, I've now had 2 texts about it. GDPR, data gathering. Anybody?
It's illegal, is my understanding. You cannot force people to give their details. So there's going to be a lot of Mickey Mouses having pints in the pub.
Yeah.
But it's also been clarified this morning, I think, that it's not a requirement. It's guidance.
I missed that.
So I think first of all, James is right as usual, but also I think that it's not a thing.
No, the two things that I think government are thinking about at the moment, I know because we're partly involved, but there's a group that's going to be developing that bit of the reopening over the next 10 days or so. The two best solutions I've heard are not every single person needs to give their details. It will be one person per party, so that's acceptable. And then the second solution is rather than, well, you can record it with a clipboard, you can record it with an app, and most of the app salespeople are pushing that very hard now, as you might expect. But honesty boxes, just have little scraps of paper and a pencil, and if you want to give your name, drop it in an honesty box. You know,
that's a lovely idea. Yeah.
There's lots of solutions out there, and I mean, I think wireless social, if you're on there, that's an obvious one. You can almost just, you know, because everyone know wireless social. It's basically a wireless offer that essentially rapes your data. You know, it just gets everything off you. You know, when you walk into the pub. I mean, it's awful, really, in a way. But I hope they're not watching. But it's a brilliant system for that reason, and certainly for this data collection thing, it would be amazing. You know,
I think personally, I was planning on printing up a load of paper business cards and just giving every time I went to a pub. It's like, yeah, no, don't waste any time with all of this nonsense. Get me to my table. There's everything you need.
I think that's the thing. Just be really wary around, if you're collecting things on paper, being really clear about telling people what you're going to do with it, and be very, very careful about doing absolutely nothing with it other than making sure that you've got the details of stuff. And to Charlie's point, that there's a whole load of things out there off the shelf. And I'd be nuts not to say that, you know, I'm also non-exec for another business where we just launched that package of just purely being able to check people in and out of venues. Which makes life just so much easier. You haven't got the paper, and you're fully GDPR compliant as well. And there's 3 or 4 of those, or even more, sat there ready to go. And it just takes probably a 20-minute noodle and Google to pick it up. And I think before we even jumped on this call, I had another feed from somebody else saying there was a 45-day free trial, etc. So if people time it right, they can cover themselves for a month and a half, work out what they need to do, get a good price for it, and from there, you might even build a brand new customer relationship marketing tool that might take your business from strength to strength.
Well,
into whatever.
That's exactly the point. Is you want that data anyway. You need to get it legally, but it's great to have it. It's great to know who your customers are. So I think that's a great point.
Do we think it's going to put people off though?
Was a big downfall of the industry, of the pub trade and the brewing industry, to be honest.
We're doing a ticketed event for our first opening of the tap room, Melissa. So that'll obviously, we'll know everyone who's coming.
Yeah.
And that's all GDPR compliant, obviously. And that'll give us a chance to think about how that works in the future. And obviously for us, it's a once a week kind of thing on Saturdays at this stage. So we probably have a little more time than pubs do. But I think the guys here have probably hit the nail on the head with the fact that there are lots of tools. We've still got a little bit of time to think about it. And I guess the key thing is, you know, what does your business stand for is the main thing. Are you happy to let people come into your business who aren't willing to pass on their information? You know, as long as you're all compliant, I think, you know, you probably want to stand for what, you know, what you want the country to be like. And I think most people who know me, I'm probably lean to very, very far to the other side of the fence from Charlie's first discussion about getting the country moving. But I think we certainly agree on a lot of things about, you know, the competency of the government, inept communication that's taking place through the whole thing. And we probably all realise that, you know, there will be a second wave and this is going to go on for years and years. So the things that you're investing in now are going to be used for a long time. They're not just going to be for a couple of weeks or a couple of months or anything like that. It's well worth the investment and doing the time to make sure you do it right.
Yeah, and as much as it's a gloomy thought, there is no reason to think that there is no current evidence to say that this won't happen again, or that we won't get a second wave. And preparedness and actually learning anything that you can, as James was saying, you know, hindsight is 20/20. But if you don't take the lessons from this particular moment in time, then, you know, you're not really thinking about your business going forward. I also think, just on the idea of people saying, you know, Mr. M Mouse and Mr. D Duck and Ms. M Mouse, well, I think there's an element of also, you know, you need to have some very smart messagings in place in venues so that you can actually talk about the fact is actually this isn't about us really capturing. This isn't about us grabbing your email. This is about us telling you that you might be thinking about going and seeing your granny on August the 1st, when everybody who's vulnerable gets told that they can stop shielding. And what if on July the 28th you've been at a pub on the next table from 4 people who have gone down with this terrible disease? So I think there's an element of also, we need to be very, very vocal about our communications about the need for this. Having that tick box of how you're going to use it later in the process is smart CRM, but I think that the most important thing is actually, and data capture, but I think most importantly is actually, this is about keeping people safe.
It's the empathy thing, isn't it? The reason you wear a face mask is not so you catch COVID, it's so it's preventing from you passing it on to somebody else. I think the same message with this contact tracing bit in pubs. So even though other sectors aren't being asked to record that information, if you tell a customer, well, we need your details because it's not necessarily to keep you safe, although it will. It's about you not then passing it on and harming other people.
Yeah.
It's that.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. There's a significant body of opinion that says there's going to be a second wave and that we're in for a long run, and there's a significant body of opinion that says the opposite. And whichever it is, there's no question, to my earlier point, that the public, a large proportion of the public, are still afraid, would be afraid to go to the pub, would be afraid to go to the theatre. And the more that we can do as an industry, whatever we think about the likelihood of there being a serious problem, the more we can do to reassure people. The more, if you like, even if it's only virtue signaling, which some of this stuff is and some of it isn't.
Virtue signaling, no.
The more we can do, the more we will get people back. Okay, maybe that's an insecurity. I apologize, but I do believe that it's super important to make pubs actually safe and to appear safe as well.
And a lot of, especially at the smaller niche craft end of the sector, a lot of the people that we supply were closing down, putting extra measures in place, doing stuff long before there was a guidance to do so. So Charlie's manifesto, where he says we led people into this, we can lead them out. I do think you can use benevolence and you can show that you're a willing operator that is conscientious. And that does bring confidence.
And exactly. This country was in lockdown a week before, 2 weeks before, it was announced. We were. I mean, I was wandering around Bath on the day before lockdown. There wasn't a soul on the street. Everything was shut. We were gone as an economy by that stage. So the government was following it, and we need to lead them out. We need to lead the people out somehow or other when it's safe.
Yeah, we were hearing stuff. Close to a month out, that bar takes were, down by 25 to 50%.
Yeah.
Beers were moving a lot slower and things like that.
Central London restaurants were 60% down. I mean, it was dying.
And Charlie nailed it with the, we just have to do this stuff because we're stuck with this now. There's no elimination. We're not going to do in New Zealand. We're not going to do in Vietnam. We're not going to be all living a normal kind of life, like they are there, where we're going to have to live with this for years, and we're going to all have to start to do things. We'll be living on Boris's catchphrases, 3-word catchphrases, for a few years yet. Wash your hands, it is at the moment. We might have another one in a few weeks, I'm sure.
I'm just really tired of being in a constant cat-like state of alertness. I think this is this is the thing. I think one of the things that one of the takeaways I've got from this actually is whilst we're all coming at this from a very commercial element, there's a deep sense of empathy and sympathy, and that we understand that this is scary for people, and as you say as the licensed trade in the brewing industry, we are very much a people industry, and I think it's important that we communicate that as much as humanly possible.
What I've learned, Melissa, is that on the brewing side, there's a lot more fear and a lot more worry about second wave, about the potential impact of reopening the economy. On the retail side, it's super skeptical. I mean, nobody's really, very, very few people are concerned. Everyone wants to go as fast as possible. So when you hear me saying stuff and you guys are looking at me like I'm a lunatic, the kind of conversations that I have on the equivalent groups of retailers are, I'm the one who's the moderate voice, who's going, who's going, whoa, guys, you know, we need to at least appear to be doing something here, because they're just kind of going, let's open, you know.
Yeah.
You're the one virtue signaling.
There's actually a big divide between the two industries.
Yeah, it's
one of the most amazing things that's happened is it's like all the gloves have come off. So it's like all of the walls have fallen down and everyone can look inside everyone else's mindset. So there's nowhere to hide, like whether that's virtue signaling or malignant wrongdoing. It's all, everyone can see everything. And I think that transparency is a real soft power. And I feel like it's not about who's going to win and who's going to take the charge. And, you know, I don't have 260,000 pints to drop into an economy, but what I have got is my customers, and we've spoken to each other and we've cried with each other and we've like said how tough it is, and that shared trauma or just that sense of a grief that's happened to everyone, that's a really powerful force, and it's brought a collectiveness where we feel like we've got something worth saving, so let's bloody save it together. And let's not get divisive and start pointing and, you know, like there's a bigger evil out there. And I think that was a lot of the talk really, really early on in this. But we have, on the whole, you know, sadly not everyone, but we have survived. So what next needs to come with more concern and more empathy. And yeah, I feel like that sort of is a powerful point for all of us to come away with, that we can rebuild, we can do things better, different. We took a long, hard look. So let's not, you know, 101, just leave it in there. Let's not bring back what was shit.
Yeah. My major takeaways are join your trade body, join the trade. So yeah, so folks, we're almost out of time. I really feel that that's been really helpful. Obviously, the whole GDPR thing will probably rumble on a bit, even though it's not yes, no, no, yes. And so I'll look into the clear guidance on that at the end of this. And if it means I don't have to read anything more about GDPR ever in my life, I will be extremely excited. And so thank you very much. Thank you everybody for joining us and watching. It's been lovely. I'm sure everybody's just about to race outside with a beer in their hands. Well deserved it is too. Don't forget that the awards and the Congress is on, so go to awards at awards.brewersjournal.info or congress.brewersjournal.info, and you can find your early bird tickets there. Thank you very much to the sponsors, Lallemond and Muntons. Thank you very much to all the fabulous panelists. Really appreciate it. Thank you. It is weird not to have the applause bit as they're saying that. It's like, oh no, okay, keep talking. So thank you very much, folks. As ever, absolute joy. I can't wait to see all of your faces in person over a pint.
Oh my God.
And
Absolutely.
I'm issuing a warning now that when you're actually allowed to touch people again, I'm issuing a rib bruising / cracking warning, because I can't wait to hug my friends again. So have a lovely day, everybody. Thank you so much.
Thank you
very much. Thank you very much indeed. Well done, Melissa. Thanks, everyone.
See you.